I want to tell you a little bit about a martial arts hero. His name was Bruce. He wasn't afraid to take the attitude that things shouldn't be done the traditional way just for the sake of being traditional. He wanted his techniques to be effective and available to everyday people. He established a school in Hollywood and taught many movie and TV stars. He appeared in movies and on television and inspired many people to take up the study of the fighting arts. Many years after his death, he has become one of my heroes. I bet you think I'm talking about this guy. No. I'm talking about Bruce Tegner. I always pronounced his name Tenier, but I was corrected by somebody and told that he pronounced it Tegner. Since his books showed his name with that accent mark, and coincidentally at the time that I was taking French classes in school, I made the reasonable assumption that it was pronounced Tenier. I'm sure most people who remember him called him Tegner, so I'm going to stay with that. Anyone my age might remember becoming aware of Bruce from these ads that appeared in magazines and comic books. They were pretty standard for the mail-order self-defense books, except I think Bruce's had better artwork than most of them. It wasn't long before I had my own copy of his 1963 book. After that, there was a stream of books with his name on them appearing in bookstores and probably contributed tremendously to the public awareness of karate, judo, and jiu-jitsu. He wrote quite a few, and these paperbacks were everywhere. Like most young guys, I was impressed with the karate book because I had practiced judo, and this business of hitting people with the side of your hand and kicking them was a real step beyond. I would study the photos and try to copy what he was doing. And then finally, I started formal karate training in 1967. After a couple years, I got this book out again, and did it ever look stupid? We were taught, for example, that for your moves to be effective, you had to have a deep, strong stance. But here was Bruce standing in somewhat awkward-looking postures, and sometimes so off balance that I wondered what he could possibly be thinking. I wouldn't admit to any of my dojo mates that I had any of these cheap paperbacks, especially since by that time we had beautiful hardcover books by established experts like Oyama, Nishiyama, Nakayama, and maybe a few other Yamas. Who wants to learn karate from a guy with a French name anyway? But now, over 50 years later, I look at this book again and realize it was pretty good after all. I'll tell you why in a minute. Bruce was born in 1929, and both his parents were judo and jiu-jitsu experts. His mother, June, is said to be the first American woman to be awarded a black belt in judo. Here she is in 1938. She was a pioneer and went on to become a real promoter of women in judo. In those days, the line was not very clearly drawn between judo and jiu-jitsu, as most advanced judo practitioners had also been taught striking. I found this early 1950s snippet of Bruce and his parents demonstrating self-defense moves. It's really pretty good. Not just from historical reasons, but as a solid strategy and as an instructional film. Bruce was the California State Judo Champion in 1947 when he was 17 years old. He opened his school in Hollywood in 1952 and was a friendly competitor to Gene LeBell, who won the Judo Championship in 1954 and was also teaching martial arts. I'm sure you've probably heard of Gene LeBell. Bruce got along well with all the other fighting arts instructors of the time and frequently was hired to teach movie and TV stars. Here he is teaching Joan Crawford. Younger people today won't recognize the name Ozzie and Harriet, but their real-life son, Ricky Nelson, was shown in a popular episode where Bruce teaches Ricky self-defense. Even Man from U.N.C.L.E. star David McCallum needed coaching. And one of the best spy movie spoofs, Our Man Flint, features Bruce as one of the attackers in this scene with James Coburn. Coburn, of course, later studied with another Bruce. Yes, that one. Just like Bruce Lee, Bruce Tegner experienced criticism from the mainstream martial arts world, which was opposed to his ideas of de-emphasizing very traditional and stylized elements. He wanted to get rid of unnecessary movements and practices in the search for a practical, more versatile form of self-defense for the modern age. He started writing his books in 1959 and closed his physical school in 1967 and moved to Ventura, California. In the 1970s, Bruce taught police science at Ventura College. He served as judo instructor for the self-defense program in the criminology department at Moorpark College. In 1977, he married Alice Greenfield McGrath, a Canadian political activist, and remained married to her till his death in 1985. The two Bruces both tried to streamline their arts. In recent years, these concepts have become more accepted, with the advent of mixed martial arts, for example. Bruce Lee's concepts are still synonymous with his name and have won the respect of many different styles. But Bruce Tegner never received the pioneering credit that I think he was due. His desire to strip away the mysticism of the traditional arts and to create something everyday people could do effectively was undermined by his image as a guy who produced cheap paperbacks. I unfortunately bought into that image myself. And now, all these years later, I'm trying to bring the same approach to my self-defense practice, and it's probably no coincidence that I recently found this old book again. I am slightly flabbergasted to see that I've come back full circle, back to the "this is cool" opinion about this book. After decades of seeing authentic but commercial karate authorities teaching techniques that don't work very well on the street, I'm very happy to see that this old book that I threw in a box in the basement has methods that I now consider to be quality. Look at the realistic distance. How often you see mainstream karate people throwing their techniques from a mile away. This is a very viable maneuver. And he's kicking just like I do now. Who knew that my quest for better self-defense would go back to the first book I bought? For 50 cents. Bruce Tegner wrote quite a few books, and today, none is in print. He was known to be a very caring teacher and was loved by everyone who knew him by all accounts. He's an unappreciated pioneer of modern martial arts, and I wanted to let you know about him and to give my gratitude to Bruce Tegner, a man almost overlooked by myself and a whole generation.